Hello, friends. The TV channel Russia made a documentary in response to the one about Putin's palace. They even showcased the toilet brush from Navalny's apartment in Germany, where, in case you forgot, he stayed while recovering from being poisoned. I understand, for many, even an ordinary apartment is an unattainable dream. But this is exactly that, an ordinary apartment, but in Germany. Every Russian could live in an apartment like that if Putin didn't build himself palaces worth hundreds of billions. Navalny's film on Putin's palace has become a big problem for the Kremlin. But the even bigger problem is Putin's own idiotic reaction to this story.
Ни мне, ни моим близким родственникам не принадлежит и никогда не принадлежало.
Mr. Rottenberg, one of Putin's quote-unquote servants, even claimed that it was his palace, starting a fresh wave of endless jokes. I personally liked the one about little Sasha. It goes like this. The teacher asked the class, "What's Lenin's real last name?" Everyone answers, Ulyanov. What about Stalin? Some people answer, Zhukashvili. And what about Putin? The class is silent. Then little Sasha raises his hand. Is it Rottenberg? Putin's usual damage control strategy is to divert attention, usually by invading another country. Oops, sorry, you can't invade Crimea again. Turns out we found another of your palaces there. Someone leaked Putin's next strategy. Reuters reported that Putin plans to allocate around $6.7 billion for social projects. Maybe that will stop the protests. Peskov, Putin's press secretary, denied this speculation. But he did it in such a way that it's not even clear what he was denying. He either denied that the proposal was real, or that the real reason behind it is to bribe Russians to stay off the streets. Either way, the government's position is clear. Putin's palace is not Putin's at all, and certainly not his girlfriend's. Navalny himself has a toilet brush. And hey, if you're still not convinced, here's a little treat for you. Not so little, you might say, $6.7 billion after all. As we now know, the construction of Putin's palace cost at least $1.3 billion, and most likely a lot more. Putin's little present to his people, all 150 million of them, is only about 5 times more than the cost of his palace. Let's say that in a different way. Putin thinks he's worth as much as 30 million Russian citizens. But maybe we're missing something. Perhaps Putin's planning to allocate more money to solve the problems of his citizens. Only probably not much more. After all, the country doesn't have much more money to spare. Putin already costs Russian citizens much more. Not billions, but almost $1 trillion. Look at this graph. It explains really well what's happening in Russia. In 2000, Putin comes to power. For the next 8 years, his first 2 terms, GDP grows at an average rate of 7%. That's a normal rate for post-crisis development set against the backdrop of rising oil prices. Then comes the 2008 global economic crisis. And in 2009, GDP falls by 8%. In 2010, it makes a tiny comeback, but still, it doesn't come anywhere near pre-crisis levels. And then strange things start to happen. Economic growth gradually grinds down to almost zero. I mean, there seems to be some sort of growth, but it's not clear if it's real, or just a clever little manipulation of statistics. What's really happening? Let's look at one more graph, and you'll understand everything. Here are the changes in the yearly price of oil. Pay attention to the period from 2000 to 2008. See how oil prices just keep going up? For those years, the Russian economy also grows. Remember that 7% growth per year? Those were the good years. Then comes the 2008 global economic crisis. Oil prices fall sharply, as does the Russian economy. Still, even in the crisis year of 2008, oil was trading at $62 a barrel, a price that was unheard of when I was in the oil business back in the 90s. By 2011, oil was back. It even broke all previous records, $111 a barrel. So what about the Russian economy? A modest 4% increase. And it happens again in 2013. Oil trades at a crazy $109 a barrel, but the Russian economy grows by less than 2%. 2013 was well before the annexation of Crimea. so you can't blame the sluggish growth on sanctions. What happened from 2008 to 2010 that crippled our economy? Now we can head back to Putin's palace. The answer is simple. Back in 2008, Putin is overwhelmed with panic, worried he won't have time to steal enough money before he's out of power. And he's not alone. His entourage follows his example and steals billions for themselves. This crazy appetite requires the restructuring of the entire economy. It's not enough anymore to hand over state-owned companies and lucrative contracts to their friends. Anything they can't get a bribe out of gets neglected, destroyed, and forgotten. $1 billion for a brand new palace is nothing compared to how much damage was done to the economy by transforming it into a bribe-based state. This damage to the economy is the real price we, as a society, are paying for Putin's palace. What's the real price? How can we even calculate it? Just a few more graphs for now, and I'll stop tormenting you with numbers. As we've seen, until 2008, our country's GDP grew at an average rate of 7%. Again, this is a normal rate. Of course, during this period, Putin and his friends were stealing as well, just more low profile. But since 2010, our country's economy has been completely taken over by Putin's obsession with self-enrichment. The palace we found out about last month is the perfect symbol for it. Now let's move on to money. From 2010 to 2020, Russia's GDP grew from $815 billion to $1.5 trillion. Of course, this growth includes inflation, but that's not important right now. If the economy hadn't been torn apart by Putin's buddies, the country could have grown at a modest 7% a year. That means GDP would have grown from $815 billion to $2.5 trillion. The difference in these two graphs is the price we paid for Putin's palace. About $1 trillion. I myself was shocked when I double-checked the figures. So, we lost $1 trillion on Putin's palace and an entire decade of growth. That's the real price of Putin's greed. And this is not even the final price. We pay and will continue paying as long as Putin stays in power. Every Russian should remember this when deciding for themselves whether to take part in any upcoming protest or when deciding who to vote for in future elections. Thank you for watching this video. Like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to stay tuned. Goodbye, and see you soon.